So we're going to solve for the quadratic formula by completing the square. Okay, so this quadratic formula is one of the important formulas in algebra. So the first thing we want to do is move the c over, right? So we're going to move that c to the other side. Oh, that's a c ratio. So I'm going to subtract c on both sides. So this is going to be ax squared plus bx equals negative c. And then what do I have to do? Divide by a. So we're going to divide the whole equation by a. Okay, so my equation is going to become x squared plus b over a x equals to negative c over a. All right, now, what do we do here? So we're actually going to divide b over a by what? By 2. Okay, and so here I have b over a divided by, technically this is 2 over 1, right? And whenever you divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal, right? You keep b over a, you change the division to multiplication, and you flip the 2 over 1 to 1 over 2. Remember, keep, change, flip? No? Yes? Okay, and so b times 1 is b, and then a times 2 is just 2a, right? And then we have to square this, right? And whenever you square a fraction, you square the top, and then you square the bottom. So this is going to be b squared, and then 2a squared, that's going to be 2 squared, which is 4, and then a squared. Okay, so I'm adding b squared over 4a squared to both sides of the equation. So I'm adding plus b squared over 4a squared, and then over here plus b squared over 4a squared. When I add it all together, this is x squared plus b over a x plus b squared over 4a squared equals, now here I have to find a common denominator, right? They both have an a, but this one has an extra one. This is a squared, this is just a, and this one has a 4 in the denominator, right? So I'm going to have to multiply by 4a over 4a. Does that make sense? Because if I multiply a times a, that'll give me a squared, and then times that 4 that's at the bottom. Does that make sense? Yep. So 4a times c would just be negative 4ac. And then 4a times a would be 4a squared. And then plus b squared over 4a squared. Okay. And the reason I did this is because I want to combine my two fractions together. Okay. Now, normally we write positive numbers first, right? So I'm gonna change this order to b squared minus 4ac, and then this is gonna be over 4a squared. Okay. So they have the same denominator, and I added the numerators together. Now, on the other side, this factors out perfectly to be what? X plus what? Quantity squared. Well, no, it's just a b over 2a, right? Whenever you divide by 2, it's just that value, right? So this is going to be b over 2a. Okay, whenever you take that middle term and divide it by 2, which is the inside, that's what's going to be on the inside of that parentheses over here. Okay, and now I'm going to solve for x. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Okay. Now here, the square root and the square, they cancel each other out. So this is just going to be plus or minus x plus b over 2a. Right? Now over here, whenever you take the square root of a fraction, what do you have to do? Does anybody know? So whenever you take the square root, So you take the square root of the top and the bottom individually. So this is going to be the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And then this is going to be the square root of 4a squared. Okay. And now just for today, I'm just going to move that plus or minus to the other side. And I'm going to keep it together. I'm not going to split it up into the two cases like we normally do. Now the top, I can't square that, right? Because it's addition and subtraction, so I'm just going to leave it as b squared minus 4ac. But the square root of 4a squared is what? It's just 2a, right? Because you take the square root of both. The square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of a squared is a. Does that make sense? Yeah? And then I can now subtract that, because I want to solve for x, right? So I'm going to subtract this b over 2a, b over 2a. Okay, so this side I'm just going to have x, right, because this cancels out. Now, that plus or minus, I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to move this negative b over 2a to the front. Okay, so this is going to be negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that's all over 2a. Now, they have a common denominator, right? They both have 2a in the bottom. So that means I can add my numerators together. So my quadratic formula is x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that's going to be all over 2a. This is the quadratic formula. Okay. So that's the quadratic formula. We are able to use this to solve for x. So on the front side, go ahead and copy it. We're going to copy this on the front. Everybody done? Yes. Okay. So right here, just so we're able to have it, let's copy it right here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac. That's all over 2a. Okay. Now, the first thing you want to do is whenever you're using this to solve, is to make sure your equation is equal to 0, just like our example, right? It's already equal to 0. Now, the standard form quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay? So what I like to do is I automatically like to label my variables off to the side. So here for this example, what is a equal to? No, so a is in front of the x squared. So what's in front of the x squared? There's actually an imaginary 1, right? So a is equal to 1. What about b? B is negative 5. And then c? Negative 36. Okay. Now, whenever I copy this, what I do is this, just so I can make sure I don't screw up with my positive and negative, I put negative parentheses plus or minus the square root of parentheses squared minus 4 times 2 parentheses all over 2 times the parentheses. And then from there, I will be able to plug in my A, my B, and my C. Okay? So all I did was wherever there's a letter, I changed that to parentheses. Okay? So B is negative 5. So inside this parentheses, I'm going to put negative 5 there. And then B is the one that's squared, so this is also going to be negative 5. And that's all of my B's. Then next is A. A is 1, so the A is next to the 4, so I'm going to plug in a 1 there. And then the bottom, I have an A there as well, so that's going to be a 1. And then that last parentheses that's open is the negative 36. This is negative 36. Good so far? No? What are you confused about? Well, because we labeled that A is equal to 1, right? Well, here, A is right here at the bottom and next to the 4. So next to the 4, I have a 1, and then next to the 2, I have a 1.
This goes for everything.
This goes for all of them, yeah.
Everything that ever had it.
Well, with the quadratic formula, yes. Okay. Does anybody else have a question about that? So does this make sense, how I plugged that in? All I did was substitute my values for A, B, and C. Okay? If you don't put the parentheses, I guarantee you are going to mess up. Okay? So instead of letters, put parentheses. Okay? And the reason people mess up is because, like, right here, this is B is negative 5, right? But I have the opposite of B, which is the negative B. So I have two negatives. So what does that turn into? So this is going to be positive B, which is positive positive 5. So it's positive 5 plus or minus the square root. And now we can start adding and multiplying and doing all of that. So negative 5 squared. What is negative 5 squared? Negative 5 times negative 5 would be positive 25. Okay? And here I'm going to subtract. Now I have 4 times 1, which is what? 4. And then negative 4 times negative 36. So,
how come the negative doesn't go for negative 4 times 1?
well, it is. Negative 4 times 1 is just negative 4. That's what I meant to say that. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. And then negative 4 times negative 36. So 36 times 4. So 4 times 6. 24. And then 12, 13, 14. So it's 144. Right? 4, 8, 12, 16, 24. 4, 8, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, 144. And negative times a negative is a positive, right? So that means this is going to turn into a plus 144. And then at the bottom, what's 2 times 1? 2. Okay, we good so far? What's up?
What about the 4 that you have right there when you multiply times 1?
Well, we did negative 4 times 1, which is negative 4. And then we have to do negative 4 times negative 36. I have 3 numbers here that I have to multiply.
But you don't add those together?
No, you don't add them. You're multiplying. Okay? Now you add them in here. So 144 plus 25. 169. Right? 5 plus 4 is 9. 4 plus 2 is 6. So yeah, that's 169. This is going to be x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 169 over 2. Now 169, what's the square root of 169? I think it's 13. Yeah, it's 13. Okay, so the square root of 169 is 13. So this is going to equal 5 plus or minus 13 over 2. Now here's where you can split it up into the two cases. Okay, it's going to be 5 plus 13 over 2, and then 5 minus 13 over 2. So 5 plus 13 over 2, and then 5 minus 13 over 2. So 5 plus 13 is 18. 18 divided by 2 is 9, right? So x equals 9 is one of the solutions. And then 5 minus 13. What is 5 minus 13? Negative 8. And then negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. And so negative 4 is the other solution. So your two solutions are 9 and negative 4. Okay. Questions? Any questions? Where? I split that plus or minus into the two cases. 5 plus 13 and then the 5 minus 13. So 5 plus 13 is 18. 18 divided by 2 is 9. And then this one was 5 minus, so this one turned into 18 over 2 and then negative 8 over 2. And that's how you get 9 and negative 4. Okay? Alright, let's do number 1. So number 1, what's wrong with number 1?
Oh, it's not equal to 0.
It's not equal to 0, so I have to make it equal to 0. How? Subtract the 20. Let me make this bigger. So I subtract 20 from both sides, so my equation is going to be x squared minus 8x minus 20 equals 0. So I'm going to come off to the side and label my A, my B, and my C. So what is my A value? 1. What is my B value? So negative 8. And the C? Negative 20. Everybody's good on that part, right? Okay. So then the quadratic formula is x equals the opposite of b, but instead of b, I'm going to write two parentheses. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, but instead of b squared, I'm going to write parentheses squared, minus 4, and then a times c, but instead of a and c, I'm going to put two sets of parentheses. Okay? Does everybody understand the parentheses thing now? Yeah? Okay. And then that's going to be all over 2a. And so from there, you can just plug in your values. So for a, it's just the one next to the 4, right? And then the one next to the 2 at the bottom. For b, it's the 8, negative 8. That's the one at the beginning. And the one that's squared. And then the c, which is negative 20, is this last one over here. Okay, we good with that? All right. So then, now we do some of the math. So here I have negative 8. What does that turn into? Positive 8 plus or minus the square root. Negative 8 squared would be negative 8 times negative 8, which is what? 64. And then negative 4 times 1 would be negative 4. Or positive 1, sorry. Times 1 equals negative 4. And then negative 4 times negative 20, what does that equal? Positive 80, right? And that's all going to be over, what's 2 times 1? 2. Now, 64 plus 80. What is 64 plus 80? 144. So it's going to be 144, the square root of 144, right? What is the square root of 144? 12, right? So instead of writing all that, I'm just going to write 8 plus or minus 12 over 2. And then this is where you split up your two cases. You have x equals 8 plus 12 over 2, and x equals 8 minus 12 over 2. And then we have our two solutions. So 8 plus 12 is 20. And 20 divided by 2 is 10. And then 8 minus 12, negative 4, right? The bigger number's negative. So negative 4 divided by 2 would be negative 2. So my two solutions are 10 and negative 2. Does that make sense? Okay. Try number 2. Try number 2 out. Over number 2. So number 2, what is the first step that I have to do? So you subtract 12 from both sides. And since 12 is a constant, I'm going to subtract it from 3. So this is going to be now become 2x squared plus 7x. What is 3 minus 12? Negative 9, and that is going to equal 0. So I got to label my A, my B, and my C. So what is A equal to? 2, right? A is equal to 2. It's the coefficient in front of x squared. B is equal to 7, right? And then C is equal to negative 9. All right. So it's the x is equal to the opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. All right. Everybody go with that? I need more space. So A is 2, so that's going to be a 2 at the bottom, and then negative 4 next to the negative 4 is a 2. C is negative 9, that's just the one next to the A at the end. And then B is 7, that's going to be 7 here and a 7 there. Everybody's good with that, right? They can plug it in into the parentheses. Okay. So if you get confused here, like what to do first, if you want, focus on inside the square root first. Okay. So this is going to be x equals negative 7 plus or minus. So let's do the square root first. So the square root, what is 7 squared? 7 squared. 49, right? And then we're going to multiply negative 4 times 2. What's negative 4 times 2? Negative 8, right? That negative 8 is what we're going to multiply negative 9 by. So what is negative 8 times negative 9? 72, right? So this is going to be positive 72. So it's going to be 49 plus 72 over 2 times 2. We're good so far? All I did was multiply the stuff inside the square root. Now I'm going to add those in the square root. So what's 49 plus 72? What's 49 plus 72? 121. Square root of 121. What is, and at the bottom, what's 2 times 2? 4. Okay, now, I'm going to rewrite this again. So x equals negative 7. What is the square root of 121? 11. So it's negative 7 plus or minus 11 over 4. So this was first. This was second. This was third. And this is the fourth thing we've done so far. Now here is where I split it up into your two cases. So this is going to be x equals negative 7 plus 11 over 4. And then x equals negative 7 minus 11 over 4. So negative 7 plus 11 is what? Negative 7 plus 11. It's 4. And then 4 divided by 4 is 1. And then negative 7 plus 11. I mean, negative 7 minus 11. Oh, we already did that one. Negative 7 minus 11. That one's negative 18. Negative 18 divided by 4.
Can't do that.
Huh?
Leave it as a fraction. Can't do that.
So then what are we going to do?
Just leave it as a fraction.
But we're going to try to reduce it. Okay, so negative 7 and negative 11. So 7 plus 11 is 18, right? But it's both negative. So it's 18 over 4. Can I reduce that?
Yes.
By what? And that's going to be 9. That's going to be negative 9 over 2. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay, try number 3. Try number 3 out. So here's the work for number 3. So you said A equal to 3, B equal to 0 since there's no middle term, and C equal to negative 12. You plug those into your quadratic formula, so it's negative 0 plus or minus the square root of 0 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 12 over 2 times 3. So what I did from here to here is I got rid of the zeros because the negative 0 is just 0, and then 0 squared is just 0. So it becomes plus or minus the square root of all of this multiplied over, and then I multiplied 2 times 3 to get 6. Then over here off to the side, I multiplied negative 4 times 3, which was negative 12, and then negative 12 times the other negative 12, which is positive 144. So I replaced all of that square root with 144, and then the square root of 144 is 12, so x is equal to plus or minus 12 over 6, and you split it up into your two cases. X equals positive 12 over 6, which is the same thing as 1/2. I lied, it's not 1/2, it's 2. Oof. So 12 over 6 is 2, and negative 12 over 6 is negative 2, so it's plus or minus 2. Okay, try number 4. Okay, so here's the work for number 4. So the first thing you have to do is you have to move that 6x to the other side. So 15 minus 6 would be 9. So now you have it equal to 0, and so A would be 1, because there's an imaginary 1 here. B is 9, and then C is 0, there's no constant term. So you write your quadratic formula, you plug it in, so it's negative 9 plus or minus 9 squared minus 4 times 1 times 0, all over 2 times 1. Now here, I gave the negative 9 and then plus or minus, but here, negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, but negative 4 times 0 is 0. So the only thing inside of the square root is just that 9 squared, because 0 times anything is 0, and it's going to be all over 2 times 1, which is just 2. Now, square roots and squares are inverses of each other, so they're the opposite. So they cancel each other out. So the square root of 9 squared is just going to be 9. Okay, so these two operators cancel each other out. So it's negative 9 plus or minus 9 over 2. You split up into your two cases, negative 9 plus 9 over 2. Negative 9 plus 9 is 0, so 0 divided by 2 is 0. And then x equals negative 9 minus 9. So they have the same sign, so you add them up and keep the sign. So that's negative 18. And then negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9. So your two solutions are 0 and negative 9. All right. Number 5 and 6 we're going to go over in class tomorrow. Okay.